Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. You're ready, right?
We're ready.
Okay.
Born ready.
I am born ready, did you say?
Born ready.
That's a good one. I'm going to have to use that one. As you can see, we haven't even begun, and I'm having a great time with American pianist Ann DuHamel about her Furious Artisans. I love that label. Furious Artisans 2020 CD, Rückblick, which I hope I pronounced properly, Looking Back. And guess what? After the colon, the title of the CD continues, New Piano Music Inspired by Brahms. And if that was your idea, which I presume it was, that was brilliant. Okay?
Thank you.
So here we go. So we've got Rückblick, and her CD from 2020, Furious Artisans, all that info, how to buy it, where to go, all that stuff's going to go up on performingartsreview.net. And this is what really grabbed me, because Brahms, complicated poison, new piano music inspired by Brahms. That just got me. That really nailed my attention right there. Here are the composers. Everybody take notes. Edie Hill, Joseph Dangerfield, and Luke Don. I want to know how that collaboration worked. We'll talk. Jocelyn Hagen, Mark Chan. Two wonderful pieces by Mark Chan. And just a couple titles for you. Edie Hill's piece is the CD album title, Rückblick, in 4 movements. We'll talk about those movements. Wonderful. Momento after Clara's Gray Pearl, for example. Talk about the sub-basement. We'll go there. We'll talk about it. Joseph Dangerfield and Luke Don, in your notes, you indicate that they got started on this thing. And it's amazing. It's called Letters, composed in 2017-18. We'll talk. Jocelyn Hagen, Variations on a Theme by Brahms, composed in 2019. Mark Chan, Dr. Brahms' Book of Rags from 2018. Come on. I mean, that's got to get you right there, your interest up. And by the way, it's fabulous. Lots of fun. And then a far more serious 2-movement piece, Playing Brahms from 2016. And do you ever feel like you're robbing the cradle? These guys were all born in the late 70s, early 80s. I was an old man already by then.
Oh, well, I guess, a couple of the composers are a little bit older than me, but some are around my age. So I feel like I am working with friends who are contemporaries.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. And you're talking to me, and I'm just near death. Okay, it's all right. It's all right. I'll get over it. But
can I say one thing? Oh, just before we go on, just so I don't forget. Originally, I had a different title for my album. After Rückblick, it was colon, and then a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I worked with Dan DuHamel, who is actually at New Focus Recordings, and Furious Artisans is part of New Focus Recordings. And he suggested, he gave me a couple of other suggestions, but so that was his idea, and I worked with him on it to do the new piano music inspired by Brahms. So I just wanted to give him credit for that.
That's jolly good, and you must have missed that I told you that we were on. So all of that is now being recorded, and we'll be there. So this is perfect, which is perfect. But also, it's really is a fascinating title. So it's really a good thing to take advice of the pros in the business, at the recording industry, and so on, because it's just right. These wonderful young composers, their take on Brahms, and this is what I wanted to say up front to you. Your notes. You did this CD right, okay? Let me tell you why. Because I'm this is my thing. I'm doing CDs and reviews and stuff. And what you did was, what you have, and I don't usually do this, but I'm very, very impressed, which is that what you did right is you did the CD. You did that right. And a very, very, one of the whatever, type C, D, or E, or rather a simple casing. You don't need fancy 3-fold, 4-fold stuff. But the program booklet, I didn't even count the pages. And by the way, the layout of it is great. But your written notes on these compositions and how they work is just an essential roadmap for this very reason. Again, about sub-basement, we're talking very sophisticated hints and indicators and fragments of Brahms's piano works, or even one of the symphonies, I think number 3, as I recall, yeah, we hear, we can hear, you know, most of us in the profession certainly, although I missed a whole lot of stuff. I think I'd have to listen to this 3 or 4 times, this CD, which would be a treat, by the way. But that's what I mean, and because of my also interest in this kind of this sub-basement thing, which is so important in art, you know.
Yeah.
Where the heart is, where the emotional content is, all that good stuff. I have some questions for you a little later on. Okay, how's that for letting it stew?
I love it.
Let's go. Hey, you know what? I forgot to introduce you properly. It's Ann DuHamel.
Perfect.
We're having a little joke there because it looks and is ever so French. But of course, you're in something, Indiana, so it's DuHamel instead of DuHamel or something.
Minnesota.
Oh,
but
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, am I in trouble or what?
Well, I mean, when you're in California, it all just is a blur, right?
Touche. Touche. Let's see. What was that? What was it? Oh, okay. Here's who Ann is, everybody. Associate Professor of Music at the University of Minnesota Morris, and you also serve as have served as the immediate past president of Minnesota Music Teachers Association. You earned your doctorate in musical arts at the University of Iowa under the tutelage of Zina Nozikova. I hope I got that one. So, okay, I think you're out of the way now. Let's get going. Right up front, I mentioned this program booklet is a masterpiece, and your signature is at the end of it.
Yeah, I wrote it.
So, because writing reviews, I'm good, but they're always an agony for me. Tell me, how many weeks did it take? Because this is really perfect.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. So I spent a lot of time with this music before I recorded it, and because it's new music, I like to give detailed program notes to audiences, important. Right? Because it really helps them. And so actually, these program notes evolved over 2 or 3 years before I put this CD out.
Of performances and whatnot, where you
yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Some of it is from conversations with the composers.
Wonderful quotes.
Oh yeah,
fabulous quotes.
I think the composers just had really beautiful things to say about their music. Some of it is a little more general about their music, and some of it, is very specific. But my program notes for the CD evolved over a couple of years. So that by the time the CD came, I had them all basically done, and it was just tweaking them to make sure it flowed.
And raising the money. Let's not forget that.
And raising the money. I mean, I'm really lucky so I work at one of the system-wide campuses of the University of Minnesota. It's not the Minneapolis campus, which is the big R1 research institution. I work at the Morris campus. We're a public liberal arts college. We're in the western part of the state. We're very small, but because we're part of the system, and as a faculty member, I have access to some system-wide grants. So I was very, very lucky that now I don't know if I'll remember which year. I think in 2018, I got a grant. At that time, I was an assistant professor. So I got a grant that is available to assistant professors system-wide. It's called a Grant in Aid of Research and Artistry. I think I'd have to go back and look to be sure. And it covered a lot of things. It allowed me to commission Jocelyn Hagen to write these variations. It allowed me to tour to quite a few places to play the works, and then it allowed me to record the pieces. So it was a big grant. I think it was $26,000 or something. It was a lot of money. So it was money well spent.
Indeed, and also, I mean, that's really an achievement, and that's and you know that a whole lot of the people in my email database are, college faculty musicians. So we all know that you just don't go, hey, let's make a CD. You have to figure out budgets and cost and grants and the whole nightmare, let alone repertoire. So let's talk about the choices. I mentioned a little bit, and we'll talk in greater detail. But did you and you commissioned all of these? I think I
commissioned all of them. Yeah. So it was a process. I guess I think I already used the word evolved, but this process evolved over several years. So initially,
gestate would do. It gestated over.
What's that?
I was being silly because I also play with words, and I was saying gestate. Because
It gestated over several years. So I think it began. So here's how it began. This is such a strange, random thing, but I am in a Facebook group called The Art of Piano Pedagogy. There's like 40,000 piano teachers in this group. And years ago, I think it was 2015, I can't totally remember, but one of the members, his name is Benjamin Steinhardt, and I always really like what he posts because it is intelligent, and I think he has, solid foundation in teaching technique. And anyway, he posted this video by a composer named Mark Chan, and the piece was called Playing Schumann. And I was procrastinating because I probably didn't want to grade or something. So, I clicked play, and I was totally enamored of this piece. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was amazing. And what Mark Chan had done is he took Des Abends by Robert Schumann, which is from the Opus 12 Fantasie-Stücke, the first piece. It's just this beautiful piece in D flat major. And he basically kept the Schumann intact, and he wrote this amazing filigree around it. And I just thought this piece was incredible, so beautiful. So I started to think about this piece, and at that time I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool if I could somehow commission Mark Chan and he could write a piece for me that's based on Brahms, and maybe I could do a program that's based on Brahms and Schumann. So I contacted him. It was like totally a cold call, and I wrote, I love your piece. I think it's really beautiful. I have access to very small grants, and that's at my specific campus. We have specific faculty grants. I was like, I have access to a small grant. It's $1,000. I'm pretty successful at getting them. Could I commission you to write a piece for me that's based on Brahms? And he wrote back, I don't know, I want to say within a half an hour. It was very fast. He was very responsive. He was really excited about this idea. So yay, that was pretty cool. And he was asking me, what are your favorite pieces by Brahms? And so I gave him a list. And then he said, oh, what do you think of the Opus 39 waltzes? And I'm like, I've taught them as duets, and I've taught some solo pieces, and they're great too. So then a few months later, I got a 2-movement piece playing Brahms. And I think also at some point he had asked me, what would you think of a left hand alone piece? And in my mind, hi Mark, if you're watching, in my mind I was like, left hand alone, ugh. But I'll play, I really like his music, so I'll play whatever he writes. And so I got this 2-movement piece, and it's amazing. It's really an amazing piece. It's not easy. But it's just incredible music. And both of the movements quote waltzes from Opus 39. So the first movement, and he says that they're like waltzes. I actually have to, it's been such a long time. I'm going to go down to it.
Let's just talk about that piece while we're at it. We're talking about Mark Chan's Playing Brahms from 2016. Yeah. 2 movements. The first movement is Waltz in 4. And the second movement is the left-handed waltz, which I had put multiple stars after to ask you about how tough it was.
It's an incredible piece. So
you didn't answer my question. How tough is it?
I think actually the first movement is much harder. Yeah, isn't that fascinating? But so I just wanted to say he wrote these because he was interested in the idea of like a wrong-footed waltz. So these are both waltzes, or they're both based on waltzes, but when you listen to them, they don't sound like a typical waltz. So the first movement is based on Opus 39, number 6, which is a very fast waltz. And this piece, it's like playing a Chopin etude on crack. It's really hard. The tempo marking...
You may have to leave Minnesota after that remark. Go ahead.
The tempo marking is, I think it's like to playing as fast as humanly possible or something like that. And actually it's so funny because at one point during the process, I sent Mark a recording. He's like, you play it so fast. I was like, that's
and then then you said to yourself, why did I waste all that time learning to play it fast? Huh?
Yeah. But it's it's an amazing etude.
It's brilliant.
It's totally brilliant.
We're looking at the last movement, the second movement, a left-handed waltz, and it is absolutely brilliant, right?
Yeah.
And very Brahmsian, of course, big and thick. That's kind of why I asked how tough it was, because you've got it's like you got I don't know how many fingers are on one hand. You got like you've got 7 fingers on
Yeah,
one hand, on that left hand.
Yeah. So that the left-handed waltz is based on Opus 39 number 3, and it's I think this is a testament to how much of a genius Mark is, because he writes it and it sounds harder, I think, than it is, which is not to say that it's not a challenge. It is a challenge because it's in G sharp minor and it's written, I left all my scores at home and I'm in my office.
Not to worry.
But it's, it's like all 32nd notes or possibly 64th notes. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But he writes it. It's so idiomatic. It's so idiomatic for the left hand that, I had to work a little bit to find a good fingering, but it fits in my hand so well.
It felt that.
So
I'm a lousy pianist, but it felt that way to me too. I knew it was tough, was hard to put together, but it felt as though it just naturally flowed. I could just see the hand being, if you will, at ease, so to speak, because of the voicing and everything else. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, like the melody always shows up in the thumb of the left hand, so that's like, I just think it's really it's a challenge, but it's idiomatic. Yeah.
And then what about the first of the 2 movements of Mark Chan's playing Brahms, Waltz
so that's
in 4?
That's the one that's like the Chopin Etude on crack. That one's really hard. He says as fast as humanly possible.
And the hints, I'm just kind of looking at my notes. I see something about it hints at fragments. They're extremely subtle. Brahmsian hints at little fragments. You can hear
them like pop out of the texture, but there's so many other things going on, it's easy to lose it.
Yeah.
Can I say one other thing about the left-handed waltz?
Yeah, please.
Which also contributes to how it sounds like it's more than one hand, which is, so in this particular movement, Mark was interested in creating like a feeling of nostalgia. And so one of the ways he did that, to accomplish this musically, is at the very beginning of the piece, he asked me to depress some of the bass notes silently and then to sustain them with the sostenuto pedal.
I wondered what was going on.
Yeah.
And I love it.
So there's this resonance for the whole piece, and it creates, a bigger, warmer sound.
It does all of that, but it also, I'm thinking of the last, I call it that last echo. And I hear it, by the way, throughout the CD. We'll talk about that. This use of pedal to and or depressing the keys to create this, glorious, mystical, amazing, distant sound. And again, let's see. Here's the punch for the studio, okay? Because of course it sounds great, because this is the if I got it right, you tell us in full, but the Weyerhaeuser art recording studio in St. Paul, right?
Yeah, so I recorded it at Minnesota Public Radio Studios. It's the Maud Moon Weyerhaeuser studio in downtown St. Paul, Minnesota. And it's really a beautiful studio, a beautiful Steinway piano. Yeah.
Yeah, the sound is wonderful. And the engineer, I don't have the name handy, but the sound engineer too, it's a real art to get things to sound exactly like a piano playing properly.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
I'm going to his name is Michael DeMarc.
Michael DeMarc. Well done. Oh, good. Well, so we got Mark Chan's playing Brahms. Well, actually, we're going backwards because that's the last. Those are the last 2 tracks on the CD, and rightly so, because that left-handed waltz is, magnificent. Okay, so Mark Chan, he's at the tail end, but we forgot to we're gonna now discuss, and I had to kind of make it a general thing. I'm talking about the rags, but it's and I mean hilarious in the most intellectually complimentary way possible, very cute and tongue-in-cheek, and all kinds of harmonic tricks and ear twisters, and also Mark Chan's Dr. Brahms' Book of Rags from 2018, a miscellanea of hemiola hijinks and other syncopated musings.
Yeah, they're so clever. They're so clever. They're so fun. So these pieces came about because I loved playing Brahms. I got it from Mark. I worked on it. I thought this piece is amazing. And let's see. So this was 2018. So I'm thinking about the order in which I did things. So I think in the intervening years, I think that I had begun to approach the other composers about commissioning. So at this point in my mind, it's kind of all a blur now. At this point in my mind, think I was thinking, oh, maybe I could do a CD because I might have enough composers as part of this project to put it together. So when I asked Mark, would you want to write another piece for me? I think I could maybe aim for a bigger grant to get a bigger piece. And he was totally on board.
Of course, ching ching.
Yeah, well, but also, he liked.
I'm being terrible. I'm a Californian these days, so you got to watch out. But
we like working together. I love his music, and I think he likes how I play his music. So we got together and we talked, and when we initially talked, I remember this because he was in St. Paul actually for a workshop, which I now totally can't remember the name of the workshop he was in St. Paul for.
You'll never get tenure.
I already have tenure.
Okay, damn. I thought I had you.
I got it last year.
Excellent. Brava.
Yay. Thank God.
Well, hey, maybe because of this too, it's part of the portfolio,
Yeah, it actually came out after the tenure vote happened. So when I go up for full, then I can put, anyway. So,
you got it all charted out. It's marvelous.
I have it charted out, yeah. So anyway, so I met with Mark. He was in St. Paul, and we were talking about me. I was applying for this grant, or maybe I had applied for the grant. I can't quite remember. But we were talking, and he said, maybe I could write on another waltz from the set. Maybe I could do a set of variations. And he said, what do you think about rags? And, at this point, I'm like, I'll play whatever you write for me. So I was thinking I was going to get a set of variations, and there would be one ragtime variation. And it wasn't very long later. I mean, maybe 4 months. It was not a very long time, because sometimes composers take a very long time to write a piece. It didn't take him long. And I get this email. He said, Ann, your piece is done. It's a set of rags. I wrote a rag for each one of the Opus 39 waltzes. So there are 16 rags, and each one corresponds to one of the Brahms waltzes.
And the key areas and the whole thing. I mean, you chart it all out in your brilliant program note. And you're right. We all need a little guidance through this CD, because it is, as I said, not just amazing, but the complexities of the idea.
Yeah.
Inspired by Brahms. I'm a 21st century composer. These are all where am I? Am I in the 20? Yeah, well, most of these are from the 21st century, 2017, 16, stuff like that. So, but I think you mentioned that in the program book, that you thought you would get something, and then it arrives at your door, and it's whatever they were, 16 or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I was going to get a 15-minute piece, and I get this set that takes like an hour or 70 minutes to perform, or actually, no, it's not that long, because it wouldn't all fit on a CD. I think it's maybe 35 or 40
something
minutes.
like that.
Yeah.
And they're short, wonderful, short little rags. It's very, very entertaining. Yeah. Very accessible. In fact, one of them really, I think, as I seem to recall, hang on, let's see if I got it's the rag Joy that's titled Joyfully. That is, I can't remember where 8? It is. It's
8. Yeah, that's a beautiful one.
Just, and what I meant earlier about this kind of tongue-in-cheek playfulness, it's these very deliberate and very amusing, I think they are, sudden tonality changes and sudden modulations. I mean, stuff that make perfect sense in a kind of slightly way. So it's just, as I said, high and happy. Those sudden modulations are fun, very tongue-in-cheek, harmonically, and so on. That's just one of those rags.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a beautiful set. You have done well in making use of government money to hire folks for this project, commissions and so on. It's great. Well, I guess we might as well continue moving backwards. I'm now at Jocelyn Hagen's Variations on a Theme by Brahms from 2019. Go ahead and pull it up if you need to.
Something weird just happened on my computer. Let me get rid of this. That's very strange. Sorry.
Hacking the Russians.
I don't know. My music folder just opened and I didn't open it. That was weird. Okay, so Jocelyn Hagen's piece.
That's spooky. Go ahead. Anyway, Jocelyn Hagen, tell me how you met her. And we're talking about the Variations on a Theme by Brahms from 2019. Absolutely absolutely gorgeous. Just
Yeah.
absolutely gorgeous, this piece. Go ahead. And
Thank
as
you.
we mentioned before I filmed, this is the most this is a contemporary CD at some at some levels it's rather contemporary and interesting and complex, but this is just beautifully accessible in the Brahmsian
Brahmsian style,
homage style. Go
right.
Tell us a little bit more about it.
Right. So I have some friends who started an art song festival in Minneapolis quite a few years ago, I think maybe in 2014. And they started this festival, and it's for singers and pianists who play art song. But one component of the festival is they also bring in composers, and the composers work with Libby Larsen.
Oh,
so the
I
name
love
of
her
this
music.
festival, I know yeah, she's fantastic. So the name of this festival is called Source Song Festival. And so there's a lot of new music emphasis because there are composers. And also as part of this festival, the singer and pianist duos come in, and they are paired with a composer from the Twin Cities or from Minnesota that writes art song, and they prepare some of these art songs.
Nice.
There are a lot of, if you're not from the Twin Cities, there is a very vibrant, there's a vibrant art scene all across the Twin Cities. Theater, music, everything. But there are a lot of composers who live in the Twin Cities, and I didn't know many of them, before I participated and was part of this festival. So I met Jocelyn Hagen at this festival, and I really liked her music. And we're going to also talk about Edie Hill in a little while. And I also met Edie Hill at this festival playing some of her music, and I liked her music a lot as well. And when I was initially thinking of, commissioning people, I was thinking, well, who do I want to commission? And I want to commission local composers, people I know, but I also want to commission more women composers. So, so I liked both of their music, and I wanted to, ask them to write for me.
By the way, are we not on a new path in the arts?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in the last few years, I mean, we're making definite headway. So
yeah, very definitely.
Fantastic.
And by the way, I was a guy conductor once upon a time in my youth, and had a very hard time. I had a very hard time for ridiculous reasons. In other words, stereotypes are awful, because you, the victim of stereotypes, if you will, of stereotypical thought, don't even realize it. So I mean, I've just been thrilled by the amazing women conductors that have come on the scene in the past few years. And yes, more, and then we need to make them all presidents of every country on the planet, so we can all live and survive in peace. But that's another story. Anyway, Jocelyn Hagen's variations on a theme by Brahms is just a beauty, and in that sense of, I have something here about it's an homage in tonality, but notationally, if you will, those big, thick, glorious, gorgeous chords, and then there must be quotes. I mean, there are little bits and pieces in just about every piece here. I can't quite remember what's in this piece, but
the theme that she chose is the slow movement from Brahms's Third Symphony.
Right. And it's absolutely, what a choice! Oh, absolutely. I mean, thank you for that reminder. Absolutely, fabulously written. The craft, her craft is fabulous. Her compositional craft. I guess I'm just going through here.
The trajectory of the variations. It's really nice how she grows the piece, and she, it starts so lyrically, and then it becomes more rhythmic. It becomes more agitated. Well, I don't know if agitated is the right word, but more rhythmically incisive and bigger, and then the way it climaxes, and then the way it comes down, and the key changes, and then how the theme is transformed at the end. It comes back in C major. This is the other thing. When I was asking this group of composers to if they would be interested in writing for me, I had two questions I posed to them, which was, I was interested in pieces that somehow responded to Brahms, but also in the idea of transformation.
Yeah, you mentioned this. Go on. This is really interesting.
So I mean, and I guess if somebody contemporary is going to write a piece about Brahms, already there is that element of transformation in it, but I'm kind of interested in the idea of transformation just as a global overarching theme. And so this is the piece that she wrote, and it's you can hear the transformation simply by listening to the piece. But she also, I think my program notes for this are basically what she wrote, because she did such a beautiful job explaining, which is this piece is about the process that happens when you go through grief and the transformation that happens and the acceptance that comes at the end. So,
yes. And thank you for that reminder. You know, I had today, which most people go, well, yeah, you had today. You had 8 hours, right? And you and I know I had a little bit of a problem there earlier in the day, another situation that came up. But my point is, this does require a lot of listening of the CD because it's so interesting. And I'm not just speaking as a professional musician, it's just interesting, and I think it's interesting to the public at large. I'm going to test somebody in a few days on this CD. I'm going to test them on it, put it on in the back during a meal or something. I've got a plan.
Okay.
This guy's from London, and as a friend of mine for many years, I'm so curious about how and he's not a professional musician, he just loves music, and I'm just curious to see what's going to happen here.
Okay.
But that's how I feel. So Jocelyn, just... fabulous. Hang on, where were we? Do we go? Oh, do you want to go back up to Edie Hill?
Sure. We have two pieces left: the Letters collection and then Edie's piece.
Yeah. Let's because Letters is, well, there's a lot that's very interesting. In fact, this is the chunky bit of sub-basement stuff. Oh, yeah. That's what I meant about. That's what I meant. I thank you for reminding me about help, the program notes from just the last piece. Sorry, I've just scrolled up to the top of my thing. But that business, what I was and am and continue to look for with Brahms, Schumann, Clara Schumann, you and I know, we all in the profession know this very interesting, complex relationship between these three, and regret. Brahms.
Yes.
As an because he was a handsome dude when he was 23, 24, and as we all know, worked in whorehouses and stuff. I mean, this guy had to have caused some sparkle and some magic, and then he falls madly in love with Clara. All that just so I kind of remind everybody. And then Robert Schumann, as we know, dies of insanity in 1856. That is my trigger. I'm looking for that, and I'm looking always for the regret. For this apparently lifelong sadness, if you will, melancholy, bittersweet, about his love for Clara. So that's very, very interesting. Now somehow we're going to jump around. We're skipping all over the place, but it's kind of fun. Edie Hill, Rückblick, looking back from 2018.
Yeah.
And the 4 movements are called, and you're going to talk us through this, although I want to spend time on Memento after Clara's Gray Pearl for the reasons I've just hinted at. But the movements are a look ahead, and Edie gives quite a complex idea of how she structured these 4 movements. Then Memento after Clara's Gray Pearl. I'll ask you specifically to talk about that a little bit. Then Here, Now is the 3rd movement, and the last movement is a backward glance. So once again, something about past, present, and so on. Let's go. It's your turn.
Yeah. I mean, this totally... So when I met with Edie, I think I met with her in the summer of 2017. I think that her piece was the second piece that I commissioned. And again, I said, I'm interested in this idea of Brahms and the idea of transformation. And so we chatted about favorite pieces, and she had played some Brahms as an undergraduate piano student, and this intermezzo is actually, I think, the one that she was initially thinking of. And she, as she started to work on this piece, she heard an interview with Terry Gross on Fresh Air. I think it was Nelson Frary. Is that how you say his name?
Frere or something like that. I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So he and that pianist had just released a recording of the Brahms. Well, I know that the Opus 5 Sonata was on it. And that sort of shifted what Edie was thinking about, because she had been thinking the late intermezzos, and then she heard this early piece. So it's really fascinating that the inspiration from the Brahmsian quotes, if you will, came from these sort of bookends on Brahms's life, a very early work and a very late work. So the first movement, so it's in 4 movements. And if I'm remembering correctly, I didn't get them in that order. I think the first movement that I got was the fourth movement, a backward glance.
Backward glance. Huh,
Yeah.
interesting.
It is interesting. And it has
The
this
process.
triplet.
You know, the
Yeah,
process.
the process, yeah. It has this triplet motive, which is like, you know, da 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 da. Like whenever you hear that, you think Beethoven. And of course, Brahms was very influenced by Beethoven. So it doesn't sound like Beethoven when you hear it in this movement, but that's that inspiration. And Edie says she was thinking of a very sort of dreamlike state when she was writing this. And, you know, again, all of these movements relate to time, but if you think about transformation, it happens over time. Yeah.
Okay, and so let me throw a couple of my little notes in at you.
Yeah.
In the first movement, a look ahead, because you've just mentioned it, I see in my notes, it seems to drift. It's gossamer. Now maybe a slight hint of Brahms, then hidden obfuscations. God, I'm bad at words here. But somehow in little bits and hints. In other words, this, how she begins the structure. Now we're kind of back at the beginning, a look ahead. But she begins this thing, I think, in kind of a mystical mist, if you will, that first movement. Second movement, Memento, this really, it's a gentle quote, I say to myself. And it's romantically harmonized very deliberately, you know, in the style of Brahms. So fascinating to become such a glorious meld, Hill, Brahms. That's what I got out of that movement. Just that she gets it. I mean, it's gorgeous, engaging, yum, yum.
She'll be so happy to hear that. And
then number three, here, now. You want to continue the narrative a little bit, or for here, now, that third movement?
So here now, okay, so let's go back to Brahms's third sonata, Opus 5. It's a very unusual structure for a sonata, because if you think of classical era sonatas, there are 3 movements, or some of them are 4 movements. You know, some Beethoven sonatas are 4 movements, and Brahms writes his third sonata, Opus 5. It's 5 movements. I mean, this is really unusual for a piano sonata, and the fourth movement of this sonata is an intermezzo, and Brahms has titled it Rückblick, looking back. And it looks back, I think it looks back to one of the previous movements of the sonata. I think it looks back to the second movement. I haven't played that sonata.
Yeah, and again, we agree. This is a toughie. This you know, you got to really. I need to listen to it 2 or 3 more times to begin to hear. It's the subtleties are amazing. Not just in this piece, but throughout this entire CD. It's marvelous.
Yeah. So if you listen to that movement by Brahms, right in the middle, of the movement, there are these 2 measures. Okay, I haven't played this for a long time. I mean, I don't play this movement. Hang on. If I play these 2 measures, will that carry over Skype?
Yeah, okay. Let's play. Let's have
fun. I don't know. Maybe I will. I don't play this movement, and I haven't played Edie's piece for a while because I've been working on another project.
Sure.
But right in the middle, and my piano bench is all akimbo. Hang on.
Okay. Now, wait a minute. Let's get clear. In the middle of, are we talking of which movement? Of the 4 movements.
This is Opus 5, movement 4.
Gotcha.
It's the intermezzo that is subtitled Rückblick. I'll just show everybody the score.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
So right down here,
where's my keyboard?
These 2 measures,
okay.
This is the basis for this movement that Edie wrote, Here, Now.
Okay, that's where we were. Good, we're back in sync
here.
Okay, go.
Let's see. How many flats are we in? We're in a lot of flats. This is going to be
I'm glad you do that too. That's the first place I look.
This is going to be very slow because I haven't been practicing this.
That's fine.
Oh, I think I didn't count that right, but that's okay. You get the idea.
Yeah, and that little piece, that little motive, if you will, is throughout that movement. That little repetitive motive is throughout. But also, again, you see why my head just freaks out at looking back, and I mean the regrets. Hello, we're talking Brahms, and you know, I mean it's just the whole that whole situation is so bittersweet. and lasted apparently all of Brahms' life. This regret.
Yeah.
So it's just very, very touching. Thus, his music is always so amazing. But here, now, lovely. And then and we've talked about the backward glance. I think we've pretty much done Edie Hill's piece. But Rückblick. Looking back from 2018, it's just a beauty. Just a beauty. In 4 movements, it really needs to be performed more. How tough is it to put together?
You know, technically, I mean, there are a few things that are challenging. I think the bigger challenges in this piece are just thinking about color and character. Some of the counting is a little bit tricky, but it's I think because her music has this very ethereal, sort of ephemeral quality, the rhythms could present issues for some people. But in terms of contemporary music, I play a fair amount of contemporary music. I think actually it's pretty doable.
Yeah, and by the way, it looked accessible. What you put up to our faces. I mean, it just you know what I mean. It just
that was Brahms.
Yeah. Well, of course it looked good then.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But Edie's piece is not much more difficult than that. Yeah.
But
so if you can play Brahms, you can play Edie's piece.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, we settled that one. Oh, good. All right, now let's see here. Where are we? Now let's have a look at this. First of all, this collaborative composer thing. We all know that's dangerous. But as I recall from your notes, something about these two guys, we're talking about Joseph Dangerfield and Luke Dawn, really jumped at collaborating together on this. And then apparently, I saw in the notes that, apparently Dangerfield got 3 or 4 more or something. Don got busy and had other things to do, I guess is all I can think. But it's called Letters. And let's see if I highlighted any. I'm going to read the movement titles because it's so wonderful. But just I know where I want to go. You don't. You know where I want to go too. But first movement, for example, movement. I guess. I
mean, they're miniatures. So
it's an episode or something.
If you look at the piece Letters as a whole, I guess you could call them movements, but they could also be performed individually as discrete pieces. So anyway,
mountains. The mountains are vast. Is the first one, and I love the way it opens in the low register and then jumps around a bit. I mean, it gets bigger and interesting. I had trouble hearing the Brahms quotes. Again, we're at a pretty sophisticated level here. Maybe chordally, or some hints or fragments that chordal fragments that might hint.
So I will be honest and say in that particular one, I also wasn't able to identify a particular Brahms quote.
I feel so much better, thank you.
I think it has more to do with register, like Brahms writes a lot in tenor register, right? But it's totally possible that Joe Dangerfield is quoting Brahms, and I didn't recognize it. It's totally possible. And some of his quotes, he changes things a lot, so they're, as you said, they're very sophisticated.
And by the way, I don't think there were any ground rules, were there necessarily? Just inspired by.
Inspired by Brahms and having to do with transformation. So a lot of things can be inspired by without necessarily derived directly from
fragments or anything. Okay, good. Now we both feel better. Okay, the second little vignette, if you will, Leggero e ben marcato. This one is by Dawn. I'm just going to use last names at this point. It's this. I love this tinkling, descending line in the beginning. It's just magic. I don't know how or why, but I love it. It's just a magical little whatever piece vignette. What do you have to say? Anything?
Well, it's quite difficult to play. For me, I think my hands are just like maybe ever so slightly too small to play it, which is why it was a little bit challenging for me. But then, so we have these. So when Luke wrote this, he was thinking, Brahms uses this marking that is so contradictory. Leggero, e ben marcato, And he was thinking, what does
Smooth
this mean?
March? I mean,
what does Brahms want from this? So so that opening A section is about that. But then in the middle of the piece, he quotes a another late intermezzo. There are late intermezzos that show up all over this CD. So this is the one that's the E flat minor from
Because they're the most gorgeous.
I know, they're amazing.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
if I had only one group of pieces to play on a desert island, right? You know, the late Brahms intermezzos, like that's it, right?
That's right, actually.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, now that you mention it.
Yeah. So
plus bananas and maybe the odd fish or two, but still something to eat at least. My soul can't live on just art. Anyway, yeah. Excuse me, I didn't mean to cause mayhem
that's
here.
That's okay. So he quotes the late E flat minor intermezzo, but he does it in a way it's so he actually
give me just a second. We've lost audio, Anya. See if you can fix it. It sounded like it just kind of fuzzed out. Maybe check the.
Is that better?
Now we're back. Now we're back. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was just something, a little minor something. So go ahead.
So yeah, see, when those quotes appear, it says ghostly on the brink of audibility. Actually, how meta that my voice became inaudible when I was talking about being on the brink of audibility.
That's perfect.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, so it's very ghostly. It's very distant. Like an echo from the past. Yeah.
And it's fragile. I have a note here about fragile. There are a couple of slams, as I recall, but it's very
outbursts.
Yeah, but and we have used the words bookends before, and there's kind of this the chordal slam, if I'm making any sense at all. And then this gentle kind of construction, stunning, and then the interruptions. There are these silences, and then to bring the whole thing around again to this descending, tinkling pianist. It's like coming in and out of a dream or something. It's just special, very, very magical. Interrupted mezzo, as in intermezzo, and he's playing with words. Interrupted mezzo. This is Dangerfield's work. What a great idea. What a clever idea. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really clever, and I think the interruptions are happening on lots of different layers. So, like, there's, fortissimo in the bass. It's interrupted by pianissimo chords in the treble. And then he interrupts his own music with a quote from Brahms.
Yeah,
and this
very
is the
lyrical.
Very lyrical, and the very famous A major intermezzo again from Opus 118.
Can't hardly miss that one. Yeah,
I know. And I wanted to say one thing about the piece as a whole, which is that. So I know Joe and Luke from my time at the University of Iowa. They had both graduated shortly before I started there, but I knew them from my time there, and we had collaborated on other things in those years. So I had approached each of them individually, asking if they wanted to write pieces for me as part of this project. And they both said yes. And I didn't really know anything about the piece until months later. And I emailed Joe and I said, hey, I just want to know, like, how's the piece going? When can I expect it? And he said something like, oh, it's going well. And I will be talking to Luke about our piece, something.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's weird. What's going on? Are they like writing a piece together? I didn't really understand it. And then he said, well, what happened is I wrote this short movement and I sent it to Luke, and Luke played with it. And then he wrote a piece in response and sent it to me. And then I wrote a piece and sent it to him. So these late intermezzo quotes, it's like they're also engaging. Joe and Luke are engaging with that late Brahms music in this way. But, that also relates to Brahms, because Brahms and Joseph Joachim, the famous violinist, they sent letters to each other, of course. But as part of these letters, they would send each other musical snippets, parts of pieces, quotes, counterpoint exercises. So it is working on other levels. It's like related to Brahms and his life.
And by the way, you're responsible for that with that commission. Hello, just without, but you know what I mean. In other words, you had no idea how this was going to turn out, and bam.
Yeah, the creativity, and it's really actually I've played this more than once, but it's really interesting to hear how people respond, because I had one audience member once responded after I played this by saying, it's like you've learned all about Brahms's life by hearing this program.
Hello, subtext,
Yeah.
subtext.
Yeah, right. And I played it at another place in New Jersey, and when I finished this set, because it ends,
Hang on.
I'm just thinking about what I played for that program, and I think I ended with, I have to go back and look at my program. Well, now I can't remember, but I just remember, I can't remember. I feel like I ended with something soft, but I remember that one audience member was just like, wow, that piece was amazing.
Well, the last little movement is this più adagio of Dawn.
Oh yes, actually it is the più adagio. So it was amazing, and she was trained at Eastman, so she was a musician. She knew what to listen for.
Because it's tough.
So,
I don't mean.
Oh, yeah.
I don't mean technically. It's practically 12-tone. If you get my drift in that
right.
opening, it isn't. But you know what I'm saying. It's this
right.
odd combination of
music.
notes that of random notes it would appear. Of course they're not.
Right.
And also this distance, this kind of distance from memory distance or something. It's just quite amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you just said 12-tone, and that actually kind of takes us into, so we'd been talking about the interrupted mezzo, and the one that appears after that is Luke Dahn's Passacaglia. And in the bass, he's quoting the bass line from Brahms Symphony No. 4, the fourth movement, and Brahms in that movement is quoting a cantata by Bach. So again, Rückblick, looking back. So it's, looking back to Bach. And Luke Dahn, he's a composer, but his research interest really lies in Bach's music. Like if you go to Luke's website, you'll see that he's done a lot of work on Bach. So it's really fascinating to me how these all intersect and overlap. But speaking of 12-tone, so you have this bass, this Passacaglia, which is Bach / Brahms / Dawn.
Sort of,
and
/ Dawn is right.
Yep, / Dawn, and it's kind of like a two-part invention. So again, a throwback to Bach. But the right hand, it's not 12-tone, but it's almost 12-tone. It's very sort of spiky and dissonant, but it's really quite that. I mean, all of the movements are brilliant in and of themselves, but I think there's something there that's really amazing. Yeah.
And again, broken up and fractured is my kind of way of thinking 12-tone. It's none of that really makes any sense, truthfully, but it's just it's that there's this and spatial comes to mind, just this craziness, and then it makes sense, and then it goes a little crazy again, and it's beautifully composed. This whole thing. But and other movements, because I'm going to have to keep an eye on the time here a little bit. But the other little sections are conjurings by Dangerfield. I don't want to talk about it but just now, because I think I need to watch time. But talk about very, very tough contemporary piece of music, writing it, and I don't mean it's hard to play, but just hard to figure out, hard to wrap your mind around, and that's exciting.
And even, I just want to say one thing. I know we are short on time, but before Conjurings is a Dangerfield piece called For Clara.
Oh, no, I don't. No, wait a minute.
Oh,
let me interrupt. And then there's another Dangerfield piece, P.S., which is also very spatial and it has a shocking opening, a couple of chords and so on. But now I want to talk about For Clara, Dangerfields, and you know why. Talk about this whole mystery of these human beings being exposed in music. And undertones. There's this undertone of darkness in the left hand. I've heard it's kind of a lament, if I dare say so, and so on. It's just amazing. For Clara, go. Your turn.
I mean, it's so yearning. It's so yearning. And the hands are crossing over each other, which I guess is, there's this physical aspect to transformation and time and wishing things weren't the way they were.
Oh,
right?
Lordy. I knew the world was complex, but you are helping me to understand, all of us understand, things are just not, you don't just write tunes for a dance hall. No.
Right. Yeah. And then another thing, now I don't know if this was intentional, but this is what I mean, there are some sixths later on in the piece that are some bell tones. And when I was working on these, I was also learning the Handel variations by Brahms, which was a piece I learned that he wrote that for Clara Schumann as a birthday present. And there are not very many minor variations, but some of the variations are minor. So later on in the piece, there's a G minor variation, and it has these sixths that go up, and that's what these bell tones reminded me of, is these sixths in the Handel variation.
And also in your notes, which by the way you quote very very well tonight. I mean, you're really right off the page. I love it. But also help. What was I going to say about this in the Brahms connection? I just lost it. I'm getting old.
Handel variations.
Oh, the Handel variations. Thank you very much, because I wasn't aware that he had written this for Clara. But that was from my experience of that piece was from my youth, my 20s or something. You know, when who cares? You're just you're just there to conduct. I'm being terrible. Forgive me, everybody who's a conductor. But the point is, when I read that preparing for today, it just really stopped me in my tracks, because the Handel variations are a little later also. In other words, this long-lasting, right? I can't quite remember the years.
They're Opus 24, so they're not that late.
They're not that, are they?
Yeah, Opus 24, you know, kind of part of his big virtuosic sets of variations. But
for Clara in this group of pieces and it's a standalone, I would think.
Oh, absolutely.
Easily. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And here I've got something for you. You know, we've talked. Again, I'm still in For Clara for a minute longer. This atmosphere, this mystery, this fog. I'm looking toward the end of the piece based on my notes. A gentle reminiscence, little segment. Sweet, bittersweet. The ending almost asks a question. But what?
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be cornball.
No.
But this relationship was so complex, and I'm so thrilled that composers Dangerfield and contemporary composers understand this. We all need to know the human beings behind the music, and that's that's it. Okay, whom have I forgotten? I'm going to pass over some of these last couple of things. The last adagio in this set is beautiful. Almost but I think we've actually mentioned it. I think. What do you think? Review in your mind. I think we've pretty much done it here.
The only thing I'd say about the Piu Adagio is Luke Don is quoting the slow movement of the second piano concerto.
Yeah, and that there are some quotes in there that are very very obvious.
Yeah,
that's one of them. And again, to choose those moments from those pieces is again volumes of info about the composer.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to end it. I'm at just pushing an hour, which is crazy. People will listen to 7 minutes of it. Who cares? What I mean is no offense to anybody, but we all know that we watch little bits and pieces and move on. Maybe next week we'll come. Who cares? I just like to talk with you, and when the talk is done, the talk is done. Let's review a little bit. American pianist, Ann DuHamel, your Furious Artisans 2020 release, which will, all the info is going to be up there on your page when I review the. Oh yeah. There it is. Rückblick, looking back, new piano music inspired by Brahms. Composers, fabulous 21st century, I should say more correctly. Composers: Edie Hill, Joseph Dangerfield, and Luke Don. Jocelyn Hagen, Mark Chan. It's just a beautiful assemblage on your part. Beautiful performance.
Thank you.
By the way, because we're all clear that you specialize and you chase contemporary music, but that's kind of almost a thankless task.
Well, it can be. I mean, I think you need to know. You need to find the music that resonates with you. So there's a lot of contemporary music I could play that I choose not to play, but I find that the more that I spend time with contemporary music, the more wonderful music I find. But I mean, it is a project. So you have to spend time looking for it and seeking out composers and making those connections.
Yeah, and then you have to learn it, and you perform it once, and nobody wants. It's the same old, same old. Nobody wants to hear it again, or something, or it takes you 11 years until it somehow is allowable in a certain program. But the point is that this CD is really one of. I'm just not throwing words around. This CD is really, really important. Really important. So I thank you very, very much because it's so vital, but more importantly because I got it right away when I began reading your program note. I realized, and your descriptions, this is thoroughly organized from
Thank you.
2016, if you will, to the present. And that's, you know, as you just mentioned, you know, it could have been just 20th century piano music, some of your most favorite pieces, or blah, blah, blah. But there's a real intent here. And I think it's a great idea, just the whole idea, just as Chan, did I get his last name correct?
Mark Chan?
Yeah, has written a piece about Schumann.
Yeah.
Now, that's kind of a riff on Schumann, the man, the music, and all that, if you will. This piece, I can't wait, because he also, Chan is also in tune with this thing here, this bit, and it's a whole age, really. You know, Beethoven, Mendelssohn, you know, the Brahmses, I mean the Schumanns, the young Brahms, and I'm gonna mention this somewhere. It's just for fun, that people understand, as I didn't until I really started reading the letters. People took their own art very, very seriously, seriously, and they all talked about it very seriously, and they were serious romantics. Romantics. Beethoven walking around in the woods. You know what I'm trying to say? This was just this wasn't artifice. This was something about the nature of creative human beings in that time, and it's very, very special.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a mouthful. Let's see. I think I'm done. I'm definitely done. Ann DuHamel, thank you very, very much for giving me some time.
Thank you so much for asking me. I'm honored, and I'm so delighted to spend this time with you. Thank you so much.
Okay.